Chapter 3 begins linear relations, linear equations. This first section, we are going to look at equations. We're going to look at graphs and determine if they're linear or not. If they are linear, we're going to take them and we're going to rearrange those equations to put them into standard form. We need to be really good at rearranging equations because eventually we need to do it when we graph. Now on our test, we just had some problems with those literal equations where we had multiple variables in our equation. We had to solve for a specific variable. That's the same idea that we're going to apply when we put them into standard form tomorrow. We're going to have equations with multiple variables that we're going to have to rearrange and put them in a certain order. So doing those literal equations should help you for standard form because you're going to have to rearrange once again. Today our focus is just on linear equations. I'm going to give you some equations and you're going to have to make the decision whether they are linear or not. Tomorrow we will get into standard form. So obviously if something is linear, it makes a line. The word linear has line in it. If it is linear, it makes a straight line. So that's what we're looking for today. We're looking to see if we were to graph this, would it be linear? Would it make a line? And there's some things we can look for that are definitely not going to make it linear. And that's what I'm going to teach you today. Looking at this next graph, is this linear? What do you think? Yes or no?
No.
It's not. What part of this graph tells you it's not linear, Gavin?
I'm going to say the x with the exponent.
Okay, so you're looking at the equation, you're thinking the exponent? You're exactly right. If we have an exponent that is anything other than 1, it is not linear. So in your notes, what I would do is write down this equation. Y equals x squared. We're going to write down those equations that are not linear so we know what we're looking for. Write down y equals x squared, and I want you to write that it's not linear if there's an exponent other than 1. In your notes, write down that equation, and you're writing not linear if an exponent is anything other than 1. And I don't want to say greater than 1, because you may have exponents that are negatives, or you may have a 0 exponent. Or you consider that. So anything other than 1, it's not linear. Here's our second graph. Looking at the graph, it's clearly not linear, is it? This is a rational function which you'll learn more probably in college. We'll talk about that. And algebra 2, we'll talk about it a little bit as well. But this is a rational function. It's not linear. We've got two graphs and they're both curves. So it's not linear. What part of this makes it non-linear? Cameron.
The variable in the denominator.
The variable in the denominator. If we have a variable in the denominator, it's not linear. So if we have an exponent other than 1, or if we have a variable in the denominator, it's not linear. So in your notes, please make sure you write this equation. And write down why it's not linear. It's not linear if the variable's in the denominator. Here's our next graph. Looking at this graph, does it look linear to you?
No.
Now it's kind of tough to tell, but it starts here and it's going to come up and it's going to curve to the right. Any kind of curve is not linear. What part makes this not linear? What part of the equation? Yes? The square root symbol. If we have a variable underneath the square root, it's not linear. It has to be underneath. It has to be underneath. The variable is underneath the square root symbol. It's not linear. What if we had this equation, y equals x times radical 8? Is that linear? It is. The rule says it's not linear if the variable is underneath. The variable is not underneath the square root, is it? It's being multiplied by the square root of 8. So we're okay. That one would be a yes. This would be linear. And this one would be nonlinear. And all is based on the placement of that variable. It's underneath the radical symbol, the square root symbol, it's not linear. How about this one? Is this a linear function? It's not. Again, you can clearly see it through the graph. Again, another rational graph here. What part of this is not linear? What makes the equation nonlinear? Jonathan. Right. If we're multiplying two variables as we are in that equation, it's not linear. So there are four things that we have learned so far that make an equation nonlinear. What is one of those things, Randy?
If the variable is a denominator.
Variable in the denominator. What's another thing, Gavin?
Variable underneath the square root.
Variable underneath the square root. Cole, what's another?
Square root other than 1.
Exponent other than 1. Okay. And there's one more. Yes. Multiplying two variables together. So if any of those four things occur, variable in the denominator, exponent other than 1, variable in the square root, or we're multiplying two variables together, then it's not linear. Right now I need you to grab a clicker from the black bag on the shelf. Have a seat. Quickly, please. Grab the black bag. You can grab the clicker. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to give you an equation. There's no graph this time. And you're going to have to decide whether it is yes, linear, or no, linear, not linear.
So what do we put for it?
No, yes.
Hang on. On your clicker it should say yes or no. Is that right? Okay, so send in your answer. No, what isn't it in here? This is the wrong one. It's not linear. Come on, guys. If you said yes, pay attention. Why is this not linear? Hey, Haley. Right. Didn't we say give an exponent other than 1? It's not linear. We have an exponent of 3, so it's not linear. I would say no, it's not linear. How about this one? Is this linear or not? Send it on your clickers. It is not linear. If you said yes, review. Look at your paper. Look what you wrote down. We're multiplying two variables together. Is that what we wrote down? We're multiplying two variables together. It's not linear. So we would say no. This one. It is. Guys, there's four things that make it not linear. So let's check. Do we have a variable in the denominator? No. So we're okay. Are we multiplying two variables? No. Do we have the exponent of other than 1? Do we have a variable underneath the square root? Was it linear? It is. None of those four things occurred, so it is definitely linear. Flip this one. You are correct. It is not linear, and all because of that variable in the denominator. This one. Be careful. We said if there's a variable under the square root, right? We have a variable under the square root. Now we have a number. Okay, so if I had done this, is that one linear? That one's not, but the original problem is yes, it is linear. Yes, it is linear. This is what we know. It's not linear. You see the difference? We have the variables under the square root, not linear. Here's the variables outside the square root, so we're okay.
Outside.
Yeah. If it's outside, we're okay. It's just the variables underneath the square root. Okay, I'm going to stop here. We're not going to start standard form until tomorrow. Today, it's important that you get all your homework right because tomorrow we're going to take those equations that are linear and we're going to put them into standard form. So make sure that you're doing this assignment. You're going to need it for tomorrow. It is out of your book on page 157. Please utilize your time in class. You've got time. You can probably get this finished.